One name, ladies and gentlemen. Tony Elumelu.
Can I just...
I don't have to say more. Just his name. C'est un nom qui, à lui seul, incarne bien plus qu'une réussite individuelle. C'est un symbole, c'est une référence, c'est une source d'inspiration. Il ne se contente pas de faire des affaires. Il bâtit des écosystèmes, il crée des opportunités. For entrepreneurs, he is a living proof that it is possible to build lasting empires right here on African soil. For investors, he embodies confidence in the continent's future. And for all those who believe in a stronger, bolder, more sovereign Africa, Tony Elumelu stands as a living testament that this ambition is not only possible, it is indeed in motion. Guiding this conversation, the ever-exceptional Lukwesa Burak from BBC News. Ladies and gentlemen, a warm welcome for her.
Angeline, thank you very much.
Welcome, please. Thank you.
That's not a welcome, is it? It's still early, folks. Angeline, thank you very much. Hello, everyone, and it is so wonderful to see a room full of Africans and fans of Africa and our friends, of course, from the Caribbean. It's fantastic to have everyone here. As Marie-Angélie just said, I have got a formidable guest that I will be in conversation with shortly. And what we're going to be discussing is a reminder of what can be achieved when the will is there and, of course, the money. So we're going to hear how it's done, what was done, what worked, and what can be done moving forward. So we are looking at decades of delivering on a shared aspiration. And as you heard shortly, we are talking to Mr. Tony Elumelu. He is an investor. He is a champion of African entrepreneurship. But more than anything, one of the things he is most proud of is that he is a philanthropist. And that is at the heart of what he does and why he does it. And we'll be finding out more about that shortly. And this year is a key year for him because he set a target of 10 years back when he set up the foundation. And that 10 years has matured. So we're going to be finding out if he met his goals. So please join me, ladies and gentlemen, your excellencies, in welcoming Mr. Tony Elumelu to the stage. Welcome. Please take a seat. Now, I have interviewed, in my job with BBC, Sky, Al Jazeera, ENCA, I've interviewed many Africans who have the power. But it's not often that we talk about the charitable side, the philanthropic side of those with the power in their hands. So this is one of the most exciting conversations I'm going to have with you, Mr. Elumelu. But first off, Africapitalism. This is your term. What I want to find out is how has AFREXIM Bank collaborated with you and embraced Africapitalism? And what were the results? And has Africa in general embraced Africapitalism? A definition to begin with would be good.
I think let me start by congratulating AFREXIM and Professor Kaurama for this event and say I'm honored to be part of it. And happy also as the group chairman of Transcorp to be hosting all of you here. So the question of Africapitalism and collaboration with AFREXIM in making it impactful across the continent, I think I'd like to share a short story, and that story captures everything. I was a banker before, And in 2010, I moved on, and I decided to diversify and do what some of my friends have been doing in trying to help empower Africa and transform the continent. So one of the sectors we decided to invest in was the energy sector. And energy investment, as you all know, is highly capital intensive. So we approached Shell for a bilateral conversation, or had a bilateral conversation with Shell to acquire some of their assets in Nigeria. And this was, we started the conversation in 2017. Shell finally agreed, and but to agree, they said we needed to show evidence of capacity, because they get many inquiries from people. And so the asset we wanted to acquire from Shell, we identified OML 11 and OML 17. The sum we agreed with the Shell was $2.5 billion, and we needed to show proof of this money before proceeding. And we tried on our resources, but we had a shortfall of $750 million, and because we needed debt of 30%. We ran to AFREXIM. We ran to Professor Keorama, and between AFREXIM and African Finance Corporation, AFC, AFREXIM wrote a check of, or supported, committed to supporting us with $600 million, and African Finance Corporation, 150. But what is very impressive about it is the speed and how it was done. And because of this, we were able to do this transaction, even though towards the end, we had a hiccup from our own government in Nigeria. The then President Buhari's administration did not think that 11 and 17 should be in the hand of the private sector, even though it was controlled by Shell, which was a private sector, international private sector. And then they said we should choose one. So we chose one and reduced the size of the transaction. But we took over this asset in 2020. We concluded this transaction in 2020 in the midst of COVID. And today, without AFREXIM's involvement, because you talked about Africapitalism, which is the private sector role in developing the continent, without their intervention, we would not have been able to do the transaction. Today, this acquisition we made with the support of AFREXIM has gone on to become extremely, extremely transformative, not just for us, the investor, but for the continent. We today produce oil, over 58,000 barrels of oil a day. In fact, NNPC just wrote to the company, we are the highest production, we recorded the highest production increase in the Nigerian oil sector, both for local and international oil companies in the past 5 years. It would not have been made possible if AFREXIM, it wouldn't have been possible if AFREXIM did not support us. So that intervention by AFREXIM, $600 million at that time, even though the check they wrote at the end was $250 million because we got other financial institutions to join. But that is Africapitalism in action. That is AFREXIM, private sector, working together to create employment for our people, working together to industrialize our continent, working together to transform Africa. We need that kind of intervention.
So you've mentioned one enabler, one key ingredient, because I'm thinking, how do you then take what happened and replicate it? Can it be replicated, or was there just something so unique about this particular collaboration that it worked? Was it just that the two of you got it and you acted? What are the key ingredients that other multinationals, other banks, other corporations can say, okay, we need speed, we need to act fast, we need, what else? What needs to be there?
The most important thing is capital.
Capital.
Capital is the most important thing. And of course, the private sector, and this is what I say to my colleagues and friends in the private sector, we must not burn bridges. When you're supported by financial institutions like AFREXIM supported us, you must honor your obligation, you must pay, you must perform, and you must also help to create employment in the process. Our commitment, the obligation, or the support we got from AFREXIM, we're far ahead. So people should empower institutions like AFREXIM to enable them support other entrepreneurs. We need more entrepreneurs in Africa doing the kind of thing we and others are doing to help develop the country. That is Africapitalism also. Everyone working together, in government, development partners, financial institutions, working together to capacitize and enable the private sector on the continent to help to catalyze economic transformation. If we did not get the support of AFREXIM for our acquisition, we will not today, as energies, not only have we increased production substantially, helping Nigeria achieve their 2 million barrel per day aspiration, we are the biggest gas injectors in the local domestic gas market for Eastern Nigeria. That is helping companies east of the Niger to industrialize, to for those who are into power generation, to improve their electric generation. So to AFREXIM, they just wrote a check. But to the private sector, to the country, to the continent, it's more than writing a check. It's about catalyzing development.
Okay, so we all know that entrepreneurs are the risk takers, the private sector.
Yes.
You're the dreamers, but you talk about dreamers, but, they have to be achievers as well. You've also said that we need to act ruthlessly, quickly.
I did say
doing my research.
Okay, no. I said execute. I said, but not
execute,
here, not on this panel. I
execute.
said execute ruthlessly, but not here. But really, listen.
Yeah. So, but are governments doing that? Are they working fast enough? Are they keeping up with you and creating an enabling environment for you guys to come in and lead?
So I speak as an investor that invests in 20 African countries. And I know that the investment environment today is different from what it used to be 4 or 5 years ago. Starting from Nigeria, for instance, I told you we cooked a transaction, $2.5 billion. The government of the day said no. They spoiled it. They killed it. But today we have a government in office that has... So you said to have 2 OMLs was too much in the hand of the private sector. But we have a government today that has allowed the separate Exxon transaction to happen, which is much bigger. We're allowed to have a country in Nigeria that even that shell asset, all of it, Renaissance, they bought it. So a government. So we are beginning to see government that understands business and government that does not feel threatened by business. Because what is good for business is good for citizenry. Aliko Dango said before, investors, why are you going to look for foreign investors? Investors will not invest in your country if they think the investment environment is hostile. Okay. So the best way to attract investors is support your domestic investors. As they invest in their economy, others will see, and what is good for domestic investors is good for foreign investors. So back to the point, we are seeing improvement all across countries. In Ghana, in Zambia, all the countries we operate in, we are seeing government is gradually improving. And of course, I saw President Obasanjo coming here, who was the father of it all when it all started, helping to encourage all of us.
So you mentioned a very different investment environment. I mean, what a timely thing to say when you look at where we are today, the geopolitics, the impact of, the trade wars. Now, this was a subject that I brought to my panel yesterday. Basically, I said, is what we are seeing today, literally on an hourly basis sometimes, the changes, the tumult, the instability, the volatility, it was actually rephrased. The narrative was put on its head. And we put out the idea that perhaps this is an opportunity. Could this be Africa's right time, right place to be open for business? What would you do with the likes of Heirs Holdings and AFREXIM Bank? How would you act to profit from the volatility that we're seeing today?
No, first is we've always said Africa is ready for business. Yeah. But what is important is to let it come alive. But I will again go back to what institutions like AFREXIM are doing. AFREXIM is actually helping to catalyze the development of our continent. And that's why I started with my own story, my own experience with AFREXIM, because without their support, I come from banking background, but when we had this kind of transaction, one institution cannot do it. And for us, we even decided that we would not touch UBA. UBA did not fund any part of this transaction. UBA did not. We had Standard Chartered, AFC, AFREXIM, ABSA in South Africa. We got all international companies to come together financially to support it. That is how you develop a continent. So first, for me, to make Africa rise and to make Africa's time actually become tangible and realistic, we need to have solid financial institutions to support the dreams and aspirations of private sector. Two, we need the African private sector, if and when given the opportunity, fulfill your own part. Execute, that's why ruthless execution. Deliver.
Ruthless.
Deliver, but more importantly, have the discipline to service and repay your loan.
Are Africans disciplined enough when it comes to financial
They discipline to service your loan. But also it's important that we look at the young ones.
Yes.
We need to know that we are where we are today because at some point in time, we got one opportunity or the other. We must not climb and take the ladder out. We must deliberately and consciously think of the next generation. And that is why what we do at the Tony Elumelu Foundation, trying to support the young Africans, young men and women, all across 55 African countries, because we believe that poverty anywhere is a threat to all of us everywhere. And we also know that it can't just be about us alone. We need the private sector, a strong private sector, and a pipeline of those people, entrepreneurs, etc., so we can develop economy. So for Africa to rise, we need to fix those basic things. Improvement in access to electricity, having capital, and that capital can be from within, can be from us. But as Jeffrey said, people will see what's happening in your economy. You don't even need to advertise for foreign investment. People will naturally come in. And most importantly, we need to prioritize our young ones, young youth, and our women. We need to bring them into the mainstream of economic activity so that the development of Africa is holistic and all-encompassing.
Before we come on to your foundation, there are two other points I just want to touch on, Tony, if I could. Humanity and social wealth. Why are these important to you, and how do they fit in with our discussion today?
No, everything. Why do we talk of development? What is this? What's the meaning of growth without human impact? Everything boils down to people. We want to have a better society. We want individuals to meet their human basic needs and aspirations. So everything we do ultimately cascades to the individual.
Is it cascading? It doesn't seem to cascade, though.
But
it seems to be...
No, but that's what it should be. And every sensible government and also the private sector, we must keep that in mind. That, so it is how do our people feel? What ultimately, how do they benefit from what's going on? And I think it's our collective responsibility to keep that in view. And to do that, we must create jobs, must involve and engage our young ones, because to them, the future belongs.
Okay, so let's move on to innovation. Digital connectivity. How far behind is the African continent with digital connectivity? And if they don't catch up, what will the costs be? And also your thoughts on AI, possibly.
I think we have missed the first, second, and third industrial revolution. We can't miss the fourth. And for us not to miss the fourth, the digital connectivity and access is so critical. You look at the world we live in today, you see the young ones, our kids, etc., they are so up to date on what's happening in the world. And you just imagine what the world will be like tomorrow if their counterparts who grew up in the villages without internet access, digital connectivity issues, we're creating a hostile future for our kids. So it's an area that requires immediate attention. We must fix our digital connectivity and access and infrastructure to actually power the development of our country. And you asked about AI, and this is an interesting conversation I've had before. We can't talk of AI when access to electricity is horrible. AI requires all about data. It requires significant investment in electricity, energy. We don't have it. We don't have it. About 60% of our people don't have access to electricity. How can we be talking of AI? So it's important,
it's a
but
priority,
it's a timing
obviously.
issue.
Yeah.
So that therefore leads to a fundamental issue of improvement in access to electricity. And I want to tie it back again to Africapitalism, which is again private sector playing its own role in helping to develop the continent by making investment in critical sectors that can help us transform Africa, like electricity. Power is so critical. You cannot develop a continent without electricity. And AI and all the other things that build on it cannot happen if we don't fix electricity. So I will use this opportunity as usual. When I discover Professor Karama and AFREXIM and others, I say to them, let's keep our eyes on improvement in access to electricity as the foundation that we need to develop our continent.
Okay, let's come to your foundation now. First off, what role should African multinationals have in fostering the next generation of leaders, but also business builders on the continent? What role should, we know what you're doing, AFREXIM Bank, other multinationals, what should they be doing?
I like to answer questions like this with stories. We set up, my wife and I founded the Tony Elumelu Foundation in 2010. Not out of abundance of wealth per se, but the realization that first, no one but us will develop our people, our continent, and two, that poverty anyway is a threat to all of us everywhere. And third point, that at some point in life, it's about legacy, it's about impact, and not how much you have in your bank account. And so we set up this, and we felt that the luck we benefited growing up, as I said earlier, all of us are where we are today because at some point in time we got one help or the other. Okay? That we needed to democratize luck and let others come into it. So that was what led us to creating the Tony Elumelu Foundation, and that with $100 million, and decided that every year we should support young Africans, 1,000 all across, from all 50 African countries, male, female, sector agnostic. And over time, we saw the increase in young Africans being interested in the program, that in a year we get applicants like over 400,000 applications for only 1,000 space. You're no longer democratizing luck, you're dashing luck or dashing hopes, etc. So we called on some of our partners, some of our global friends, and said, let's do this together. We have a time-tested program, the Tony Elumelu Foundation, that helping to catalyze economic prosperity. And so we have some who have come on board, United, UNDP, EU, European Union Commission, the ICRC, and then recently someone talking, Professor Sachs was talking about the connection, the improving relationship between the Gulf states and Africa. I would say we're doing that already through the Tony Elumelu Foundation and the UAE Foundation.
Our time is
all
up.
of us coming together to help these young Africans, give them economic hope, access, capital, and train them so that collectively we can develop the continent and have new pipeline of entrepreneurs.
Do you know what? Our time is up. It's flown by.
But
I'm going to be flashing, isn't it? I know, I can go, but I'm going to be naughty. There are two questions I need to squeeze in.
All right, go ahead.
The first of which comes from a member of the public. Okay? Now, for me, this is more important than my question. So I'm going to pose this question to you, Tony. I'm not going to say who it is. It was a lovely, lovely gentleman at an event that I met, but we had a stimulating conversation. And he says, I've got a question for Mr. Elumelu. I went, go on then. And he said, so let me just, here we go. Nigeria has a population of approximately 200 million, of which 60% are youth. And we know that our young are very, very restless. There aren't enough jobs. I know that Tony Elumelu has a foundation. What can he do to reach out to our young people? What concrete impact have you made? And what are your plans for the next 5 years, with specific reference to the creative industry? He said the creatives, for example, of Nigeria, but I'm sure this is across the continent, are unable to get financing because traditional banks don't get it. They don't get it. The banks are unwilling to fund these businesses, for example, guiding them with copyright, protecting, their copyright for films and music. Banks don't know how to take action. What can Tony do as chairman of one of Africa's biggest banks and having a foundation for young people? What are your plans to ensure that this group of people are not left behind?
Okay, so what can we do? It's not even what can we do, it's what are we doing?
Okay.
So today, through the Tony Elumelu Foundation, we have provided non-refundable seed capital of $5,000 each to over 21,000 young African males and females. Fact. We have trained over 1 million young African entrepreneurs through the TF Connect Digital Network to help them become, because at times it's not just about capital. You need capital, but more important, you need to know what to do when you have capital. So we have trained over 1 million young Africans.
The police are here.
So there's so much we have done. I wish we had more time.
Okay.
But it's not about what can we do.
Yeah,
we are doing right now.
Okay, my last question. Don't shout at me. Last question. What would your legacy like to be, Tony?
As someone who helped to create prosperity for others, as someone who helped to empower others. That's what we do at the Tony Elumelu Foundation.
Tony Elumelu, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much indeed.